Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. Yuan Shikai was a highly renowned political and military figure in modern Chinese history. And he was also the leader of the Beiyang warlords. He was a native of Xiangcheng, Hunan province, so people often called him Yuan Xianzhong. In addition, when people mention Yuan Shikai, the first thing that often comes to mind is that he once served as the President of the Republic of China, or perhaps the infamous and somewhat farcical episode where he tried to declare himself emperor. However, we won't be discussing those serious political topics here. Instead, let's focus on something lighter and more down-to-earth, Yuan Shikai's 10 wives. According to historical records, Yuan Shikai's romantic life was quite eventful. In 1876, at the age of 17, he married his primary wife, Madame Yu, the starting point of his marital journey. As Yuan Shikai rose steadily through the political ranks and gained increasing power, the number of mistresses in his household grew accordingly. Eventually, he had 9 concubines in addition to his official wife, making a total of 10 wives. Only Madame Yu held the status of the legitimate wife, while the other 9 were concubines. In that era, it wasn't unusual for powerful men like Yuan Shikai to have multiple wives. But what made Yuan's 10 wives particularly notable was not just their number, which formed a perfect 10, but also their diverse backgrounds and appearances. Among them, 3 had once worked in brothels. And 3 were of Korean origin, which added further intrigue to their stories. Next, let's take a closer look at each of these 10 women, examining their origins, appearances, roles, and fates in the Yuan household. First, concubine Madame Shen, the half-legitimate wife from a brothel. Madame Shen was Yuan Shikai's top-ranking concubine and also his most beloved. She was once a famous courtesan from the Suzhou area, her skin as white as snow, with delicate features and a gentle demeanor, a quintessential beauty from the Jiangnan region. When Yuan Shikai met her, he was still unknown and quite poor. Madame Shen didn't look down on him. Instead, she used her own savings to support his studies and help him pursue an official career. Yuan Shikai never forgot this kindness. After he gained power, he brought her into his household and gave her the title of first concubine, treating her almost equally to his legitimate wife, Madame Yu. Madame Shen was not only beautiful but also capable in managing the household. She even represented the Yuan family at formal occasions and diplomatic events. Yuan's children affectionately called her mother, showing her high status in the household. Her beauty and wisdom made her the most beloved figure in the Yuan residence. Sixth, concubine Madame Yei, from the son's lover to the father's woman. Madame Yei's story is somewhat scandalous, but it's undeniably true and jaw-dropping. She was originally the lover of Yuan Shikai's second son, Yuan Qian. She was a striking beauty, with a graceful figure, smooth skin, and captivating eyes, the kind of woman who could enchant with just a smile. Yuan Qian had intended to marry her, but one day, Yuan Shikai happened to see her photo and was instantly smitten. To please his father, Yuan Qian sacrificed his love and gave Madame Yei up. Thus, Madame Yei went from being a prospective daughter-in-law to becoming Yuan Shikai's 6th concubine and one of the mistresses of the household. After entering the family, she quickly bore Yuan Shikai 5 sons and 2 daughters, making her the undisputed, childbearing champion of the Yuan household. She was also famed for her beauty, and Yuan Shikai doted on her immensely. Though awkward, this tale of a father and son loving the same woman further illustrates the extraordinary allure of Madame Yei. 8th concubine Madame Gua, the girl in red who stole the show. Madame Gua was one of Yuan Shikai's later concubines and also came from a brothel background. She joined the household at the age of 18, youthful, radiant, and graceful. Wearing a red dress with a charming smile, she captivated Yuan Shikai at first glance. After she entered the Yuan residence, Yuan Shikai often visited her quarters to drink and relax. Madame Gua was smart and considerate, skilled in pleasing others, and eventually bore him 2 sons and a daughter. Despite her young age and short tenure, her beauty and savvy helped her secure a stable position in the household. It was said that her smile could topple a city, and she always managed to come out on top in the inner court rivalries of the Yuan mansion. Second concubine Madame Wu, the gentle maid-turned-wife. Madame Wu was the second concubine. She originally served as a maid accompanying the third concubine, Madame Kim, and was from Korea. She was petite, with delicate features and a particularly gentle personality. When Yuan Shikai married Madame Kim, he thought this maid was quite nice as well. So he took her in as a concubine too. Though Madame Wu came from humble origins, her strength lay in her gentleness and attentiveness. She was also very tactful, low profile and never vying for favor, yet she bore Yuan Shikai 4 sons and 2 daughters, quietly fulfilling the role of a devoted and capable wife. Her elegant demeanor and obedient character earned her popularity within the Yuan household. Though her life wasn't flashy, it was stable and peaceful. Third concubine Madame Kim, noble background, too strong-willed. Madame Kim, Madame Wu's mistress, also came from Korea. She was of noble birth and was reportedly a relative of a Korean princess, giving her a distinguished background. She had fair skin, stunning features, long flowing hair, and a refined aura, a classic, palace beauty. When she first entered the Yuan household, she assumed she would become the primary wife. But being taken in only as a concubine left her feeling discontent. Her temper was quite unstable, gentle at times, irritable at others. Still, due to her beauty and aristocratic manner, Yuan Shikai remained fond of her. She bore him 2 sons and 3 daughters. However, despite her looks, her temperament made life in the Yuan residence somewhat unhappy for her. Fourth concubine Madame Min, the Korean girl who used Peking opera to win favor. Madame Min, like Madame Wu, was originally a maid accompanying Madame Kim, and also came from Korea. She had delicate features, a quiet temperament, and carried a scholarly air. To please Yuan Shikai, she even studied the tiptoe walk of Peking opera's Dan, female, roles, imitating the gait of women with bound feet. The trick worked. Yuan Shikai was quite taken with it and grew very fond of her. She bore Yuan Shikai 1 son and 3 daughters. Though not especially outstanding, her obedience and diligence helped her carve out a respectable place in the Yuan household. A note on Madame Yu, the primary wife. Madame Yu was Yuan Shikai's legal wife, hailing from a wealthy family in Hunan. Her appearance was plain, and she was uneducated and unfamiliar with social etiquette. So she was never favored by Yuan Shikai. They married in 1876, and she later gave birth to Yuan's eldest son, Yuan Keting. However, Yuan Shikai rarely spent time with her, essentially treating her as a formality. Despite lacking in beauty and affection from Yuan, her status as the legal wife was unshakable and firmly established her position in the household. Fifth concubine Madame Yang, not the most beautiful, but the most capable. Madame Yang, Yuan Shikai's 5th concubine, wasn't the most beautiful, but she was undoubtedly the most capable. She had delicate features, but more importantly, she was smart, efficient, and excellent at managing household affairs, earning her the nickname, the Wang Shifeng of the Yuan household. She bore Yuan Shikai 4 sons and 2 daughters and oversaw the household's internal affairs. Her status was second only to another favored concubine, Madame Shen. Yuan Shikai trusted her deeply, entrusting her with nearly all domestic matters. 7th concubine Madame Zhang, gentle beauty with a tragic fate. Madame Zhang had graceful looks and a gentle, pleasant temperament, but unfortunately, she was unable to bear children. Her status in the Yuan household was average. In her later years, there was a rumor that she had an affair with the family gardener. When Yuan Shikai discovered it, he allegedly forced her to drink poison, resulting in her tragic death. However, others claim she died of illness. The truth remains a mystery. In any case, She was one of the rare beauties in the Yuan residence but was not blessed with a good fate. 9th Concubine Madame Lu, the youngest and most charming. Madame Lu originally served as Madame Yang's personal maid. She caught Yuan Shikai's attention and was promoted to concubine, becoming the 9th. She was the youngest, charming in appearance, and gave birth to 1 son and 1 daughter. Although she entered the household last and held relatively low status, her youth and beauty gave her a certain advantage. What happened to Yuan Shikai's 10 wives after his death? Some may wonder about the fate of Yuan Shikai's 10 wives after his passing. According to historical records, Yuan Shikai died on June 6, 1916, from uremia, at the age of 57. After his death, the lives of the women in his household changed drastically. Most lived off the inheritance he left behind, but their individual fates varied greatly. Madame Yu, principal wife, though she held the highest title, she had been neglected early on. In her later years, she lived a lonely life and passed away quietly in an empty residence, with barely anyone paying attention. Madame Shen continued managing household affairs, with devoted children. Her later years were relatively peaceful. Madame Wu lived a quiet life, focused on raising her children. Madame Kim, rumors claimed she was bullied by Madame Shen and suffered from a leg illness. She ultimately died in depression, a rather tragic end. Madame Min lived a life similar to Madame Wu, quietly raising her children without much drama. Madame Yang continued managing household matters even in her old age in Tianjin. She was seen as a strong and resilient figure. Madame Yi always carried the psychological shadow of being taken from someone else, but still managed to raise her children and lived a relatively uneventful later life. Madame Zhang, her death remains controversial. If the alleged affair was true, she may have been poisoned; if not, she died of illness. Either way, she passed away quietly and without fanfare. Madame Gua focused on raising her children in a stable manner, without many ups and downs in life. Madame Lu, as the youngest, she raised her children but left little trace in historical records afterward. In conclusion, the fates of Yuan Shikai's wives ranged from respectable to tragic. Largely influenced by their backgrounds, their standing within the Yuan household, and the nature of their relationship with Yuan Shikai himself. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.